Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Eagles season playthrough of Tecmo Super Bowl. Doing a quick introduction video on the Eagles, just to review who their best stars are, how best to play them, and then give a little bit of an introduction on how their actual season went in 1991. In 91, the Eagles won 10 games, yet still didn't manage to make the playoffs. The offense was mediocre at best with almost no running game, but a star-studded defense kept them in many games. Football Outsiders considers the 1991 Eagles to be the best defense in NFL history. So that's about how they play in the game as well. They've got a couple decent players on offense, but primarily going to be winning the games through defense. Your main weapon on offense is going to be Randall Cunningham, also known as QB Eagles in this particular game. He was an NFL star, Pro Bowler, one of the truly mobile quarterbacks of this generation, and it was back when offensive coordinators really didn't know how to use a mobile quarterback. Read option was only a sketch on the back of Rich Rodriguez's pizza box when Cunningham was in college. He actually starred at UNLV, of all places, as both a quarterback and as a punter. He averaged over 40 yards per punt and was their regular punter for 3 years. He would go on to star for the Eagles and the Vikings, as well as play for a couple other teams. He retired with the most rushing yards by a quarterback in league history, and he's currently sitting in 4th place. If he had played today, he would be Josh Allen, probably even better than Josh Allen. In 1991, though, the year this season is set, Cunningham would be lost to an opening day knee injury after just a few plays. And that's really what turned the season for the Eagles, was that one play. In Tecmo Super Bowl, QB Eagles is an offensive force. His maximum speed is the highest maximum speed of any quarterback in the game. His passing is excellent, and honestly, he's the guy that's going to make your offense go. If you have to fall back to Jim McMahon, you're in trouble, and that's what happened in real life. Jim McMahon himself, he was also an NFL star. He was the starting quarterback for the Bears in the mid-'80s when they won their Super Bowl. He came to the Eagles in 1990 as a backup. Injuries had plagued him in the last several seasons, where he'd washed out as a starter in both Chicago and San Diego. Like I said before, in 1991, Cunningham was lost in the opening game, and McMahon ended up having to lead the team. Overall, the Eagles would have 5 different quarterbacks in 1991. Somehow, though, they still managed to squeak out a 10-win season. In Tecmo Super Bowl, McMahon is a clear step down in all regards from QB Eagles, both in his passing and his running. And honestly, if QB Eagles gets injured in a game, you're going to have to completely change the way you play because McMahon simply can't scramble. Although listed as a running back in the game, Keith Byers was more of a fullback or an H-back in reality. If you viewed him through a modern lens, you'd probably also call him a tight end. From 1998 to 1993, he finished 6 of those 7 seasons with at least 60 receptions, including 81 in 1990. But at the same span, he averaged less than 70 carries per season. And that does show in Tecmo Super Bowl ratings. You see his receptions there are the highest of any running back in the game. And honestly, he's better than some of the wide receivers for this team. And really, your playbook for the Eagles should reflect that. Heath Sherman will be your primary running back for the Eagles, although in 1991 he was just part of a running back by committee approach. In real life, he only played 5 seasons in the NFL, but he is your best option for a running back on this team. Even with that being the case, you can see that his stats overall very mediocre, not a lot of speed, no rushing power, and honestly, he's a fumble machine. The backup running backs, Anthony Toney and Robert Drummond, are also nothing to write home about. Toney didn't even play for the Eagles in 1991, and he never rushed for more than 600 yards in any particular season. Drummond only played 2 years in the NFL before he moved to the Canadian Football League. In game, they're pretty unremarkable, although Drummond could make the case of being better than Sherman in certain situations because he does have better ball control. But neither one will probably be the primary running back for the Eagles. When it comes to wide receivers, in real life, Fred Barnett was an excellent NFL wide receiver. He had 2,000-yard seasons during his career, and he made a Pro Bowl. In Tecmo Super Bowl, he's pretty slow, but he's got good hands, and he should be your primary wide receiver for the game. In game, his stats do not reflect the speed that he had in real life. 38 maximum speed makes him relatively slow, especially compared to Keith Jackson and QB Eagles as you play the game. Calvin Williams is your starting wide receiver on the other side of the field. He was once called by John Madden one of the best kept secrets in the NFL. The truth is he was a tremendous athlete, a great blocker, and he led the Eagles in touchdowns in 1990, 1992, and 1993. In game, Calvin Williams has mediocre speed, mediocre receptions. He's not going to be a focal point of the offense, but he will probably be your second wide receiver compared to the other people that are on your bench. Mike Quick and Kenny Jackson make up your backup receivers for this team. Quick was a 9-year NFL veteran. He made 5 Pro Bowls. He had a 99-yard touchdown catch once in overtime. However, in 1991, he was cut from the Eagles during training camp, and he didn't ever play another snap in the NFL. He was replaced with Roy Green. Roy Green's playing for the Cardinals in this game because the rosters were set before training camp. Kenny Jackson caught a grand total of 4 passes in 1991. He hadn't been a starter for the Eagles since 1987. Stat-wise, Mike Quick is not that much worse than Calvin Williams or Fred Barnett if you had to fall back to one of them. However, Kenny Jackson is slow and probably shouldn't be played. The other Jackson on the offense is Keith Jackson. He's a member of the College Football Hall of Fame, a 5-time Pro Bowler, arguably the best tight end of his era. He had been a first-round draft pick of the Eagles in 1988. The other interesting thing about Keith Jackson is he was part of the Plan B lawsuit that ushered in NFL free agency as we currently know it today. In game, Keith Jackson is going to be your secondary offensive weapon behind QB Eagles. He's got the highest speed of any other player on the offense. He's also a very good blocker. His backup, Harper LaBelle, was actually not really a tight end in the NFL. He was more of a long snapper. He did play for 6 different teams over a 13-year career, though. He had a grand total of 1 reception for 9 yards in his entire NFL career. The offensive line for the Eagles is a mixed bag. David Alexander is a liability. His low hitting power makes it so that many nose tackles run him over on every play. And that should be part of your game plan whenever you're going up against a good nose tackle on the opposing team. Mike Shadd's claim to fame in real life is he's the only player from Queen's University in Ontario to ever be drafted to play in the NFL. In the game, he's a solid offensive guard, and he won't let you down. Ron Solt was a 10-year NFL veteran, including a Pro Bowl appearance, but he was near the end of his career in 1991. He is another liability on the offensive line and should be game planned around. Ron Heller is the left tackle, solid NFL player, very average in Tecmo Super Bowl, but not a liability either. Reggie Singletary is your other offensive tackle, about the same stat line as Heller. The only thing interesting about Singletary is that in 1991 he actually played for the Packers, not for the Eagles. Overall, the offensive line for the Eagles is nothing to write home about, but it also won't get you in too much trouble either. On defense is where the Eagles truly shine. That was both in real life and in Tecmo Super Bowl. You could play as Allen, Brown, or Joyner on any given play and probably be in pretty good shape. You can let Simmons and Reggie White be both controlled by the computer and they will still wreak havoc even without you controlling them. In reality, they had 3 Pro Bowlers, 3 All-Pros, and 2 additional players making the Pro Bowl Their base defense in real life was a 4-6, the Buddy Ryan 4-6. However, in Tecmo Super Bowl, every team plays a 3-4, so therefore they had to move some players around by position. The 3-down defensive linemen for the Packers are all excellent. Clyde Simmons is on the top. He's one of the best players on the team. He had a 14-year NFL career, 2-time Pro Bowler, led the NFL in sacks in 1992, and after his career in the NFL, he went on to be a college coach. He's a bit overshadowed by Reggie White, but in game, he is a beast and a major disruptor. Mike Golick is your nose tackle. He's much more well known now for his television appearances than his NFL career, but he did last 8 years. His brother Bob was a better player, but Golick is a solid addition to the line and certainly one of the better nose tackles in the game. The other end is Reggie White, arguably one of the greatest defensive ends to ever play the game. He was named NFL Defensive Player of the Year twice. He's currently second on the all-time sack list, and he was named to the NFL Hall of Fame in 2006. He's also the only player to have his number retired by 2 different teams. In game, Clyde Simmons, when he gets in good or excellent condition, starts becoming a force. Golick, while not very fast, holds his own because of his hitting power. And Reggie White is probably the best player on the defense. At outside linebacker, you have Jesse Small and Seth Joyner. Jesse Small was a second-round draft pick in the NFL draft. He only played for 2 seasons in the NFL, though, before going to the CFL. He is the weakest link on this defense. He's slow without much hitting power. Seth Joyner, on the other hand, 12-year NFL career, 3 Pro Bowls, with ending his career with 52 sacks, 24 interceptions, and 5 defensive touchdowns. Paul Zimmerman of Sports Illustrated named him the NFL Player of the Year in 1991. In game, Seth Joyner is going to be one of the players you play as the most. That lower outside linebacker with height, with a good speed, is probably one of your best weapons for stopping the run, and he can also cover the pass. Small, on the other hand, is just too slow, and it's unfortunate because he's your primary kick blocker. The middle linebackers for this team are Jerome Brown and Byron Evans. Jerome Brown was actually a defensive lineman for the team, but when the defense was changed from a 4-6 to a 3-4, he was moved to linebacker. He was tragically killed in a car accident before the 1992 season after having 2 All-Pro seasons in 1990 and 1991. He's one of the best players on the defense in the game. Byron Evans is probably underrated by NFL historians. He played the same position in the 4-6 as Mike Singletary did in the Chicago, acting as the quarterback of the defense. In game, Evans is going to rack up stats, especially sack stats, when you guess the computer's play. However, Jerome Brown is by far the better player. Better speed, better hitting power, higher quickness, and you'll probably be playing in him more often. The 2 cornerbacks for the Eagles are Eric Allen and Ben Smith. Eric Allen was a Pro Bowl player and played 14 seasons in the NFL. He had 4 pick sixes in 1994, along with 3 forced fumbles, and somehow he didn't make the All-Pro team that year. Ben Smith was a first-round draft pick of the Eagles in 1990 and ended up playing 6 years in the NFL. In the game, Allen is the much better player to control with a better speed and better hitting power. However, Ben Smith will probably get you some interceptions over the course of the season because of his high interception and high quickness. At safety, Hopkins and Waters were probably downgraded in the game to try to make the game a bit more fair. In reality, in 1991, they were probably the heart and soul of the defense. Andre Waters led the team in tackles in 4 different seasons. And Wes Hopkins also was a 10-year veteran. However, in game, neither one are particularly good. Their hard hitting is reflected in their hit power, but low speeds. You won't be using probably either of these safeties in the game. For kicker and punter on the Eagles, you're getting 2 middle-of-the-pack players. Ruzek really wasn't that good in real life. while Fiegels, on the other hand, is one of the few NFL players to have played a game in 4 different decades. He holds the NFL record for most career punts and had a career of over 22 years. So that's the summary for the Philadelphia Eagles. There are other videos on YouTube that are better describing their 1991 season than I've given you here. I'll provide links to those in the description for the video. Otherwise, this is Landry, and I'll see you when I start playing. Thanks.